I was standing on the dock when I saw my daughter-in-law struggling with a heavy suitcase. She kept glancing over her shoulder, not nervous, terrified. Then she shoved it into the lake. The splash echoed louder than it should have. My stomach dropped instantly, because people do not dump suitcases like that unless they believe the truth is inside. And as I watched the ripples settle, one thought burned through my mind. She did not know I had seen everything. And she had no idea what I was about to pull back out of that water. My name is Margaret Hale, and I was 62 years old when I learned that betrayal does not always arrive screaming. Sometimes it slips into your life quietly, smiling at the dinner table, pouring you tea, calling you family. I had lived long enough to believe I understood people. I had survived grief, poverty, and the kind of loneliness that settles into your bones after midnight. I thought I was prepared for anything. I was wrong. I lived in a modest lakeside home that had belonged to my late husband's family for generations. The lake was calm most mornings, smooth as glass, reflecting the sky like it was trying to remember something important. That place was not just property to me, it was memory. It was proof that love had once existed in my life. After my husband passed away suddenly from a stroke, that house became my anchor. I raised my son Daniel there alone. I worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, holidays, and sleep. Everything I did was for him. Daniel grew up gentle, too gentle. He trusted easily. When he met Alina, I wanted to believe she was good for him. She was beautiful in a precise way, always polished, always controlled. She spoke softly, but her eyes were sharp, always measuring, always calculating. The first time she hugged me, I remember feeling how stiff her body was, like she was already bracing for something she had not decided yet. First, she called me Margaret. Then it became Mom. People always think that is sweet. Sometimes it is not. They moved in with me after the wedding. Lena said it made financial sense. She said families should stay together. Daniel agreed without hesitation. I did not want to be the difficult mother-in-law, so I said yes. That decision changed everything. The first signs were small enough to ignore. A bracelet missing from my dresser. A document not where I remembered placing it. When I asked about them, Alina tilted her head and smiled gently, the way people do when they are pretending to be patient. She said stress could affect memory. She said grief had a way of confusing the mind. Daniel stood behind her, silent, uncomfortable, unsure who to believe. That silence became its own answer. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. Alina reorganized the kitchen without asking. She replaced my curtains. She moved my late husband's photographs into a drawer because, as she put it, they made the house feel heavy. Every change was framed as helpful. Every objection I raised was treated like proof of my instability. Then the finances shifted. Lena insisted on managing the bills. She said it would reduce my burden. She said she had experience. I noticed small withdrawals from my account, always just low enough to make me question myself. When I asked, she laughed softly and said, I must have forgotten a purchase. Daniel avoided eye contact. He always did when conflict appeared. That was the first time fear settled in my chest. The lake outside my window never changed. It stayed calm, watching, waiting. I started locking my bedroom door at night. Kai started writing things down. Dates, numbers, conversations. I felt ridiculous doing it. Like I was preparing a defense against someone who had already decided my guilt. Every time I tried to talk to Daniel alone, Alina found a reason to be present. She poured wine. She touched his arm. She spoke for him. Then one morning I went to retrieve my legal documents. The folder was gone. My husband's life insurance papers. The deed to the house. The originals I had kept safe for decades. When I asked Alina where they were, she did not hesitate. Are you sure you ever had them? She said. The way she said it made my stomach turn cold. That was the moment I realized the stakes were no longer emotional. They were existential. If I lost those documents, I did not just lose property. I lost my credibility, my autonomy, my life. I began to understand something terrifying. Alina was not just trying to control the household. She was building a story. One where I was confused. One where she was the savior. One where Daniel would not have to choose because the choice would already be made for him. And then, one afternoon, I saw her carrying a suitcase toward the lake. She did not see me watching. And in that moment, everything I feared sharpened into certainty. After the day I saw Alina near the lake with that suitcase, something inside me shifted. Not into panic, into awareness. When you finally understand that someone is actively working against you, every interaction sharpens. Every smile becomes a mask. Every kindness becomes a test. I did not confront her. Not yet. I needed to see how far she was willing to go. Her behavior escalated in ways that were subtle enough to deny, but consistent enough to suffocate me. She began speaking for me in front of others. When neighbors asked how I was doing, Alina answered before I could open my mouth. She described me as tired, confused, overwhelmed. She did it with concern woven so neatly into her tone that anyone listening would have admired her devotion. Anyone except me. Daniel started repeating her words. He asked if I was sleeping well. He suggested I should let Alina handle things. His voice carried worry, but it was the kind of worry that has already chosen a side. Each time he looked at me, I felt something slipping further away. Trust does not shatter loudly. It erodes quietly, grain by grain, until you realize there is nothing solid left to stand on. The house felt different now. Doors closed more often. Conversation stopped when I entered the room. Alina began keeping lists on the refrigerator, written in neat handwriting. Tracking expenses, appointments, medications I did not take. She said it was for organization. I knew it was for evidence. She was building a record of my supposed decline. Then came the doctor appointment. She insisted on coming with me. She answered questions meant for me. She described symptoms I did not have. Memory lapses, confusion, difficulty managing finances. I watched the doctor nod slowly, taking notes, glancing at me with professional concern. When I tried to correct her, Alina placed a hand on my knee and squeezed gently, like a warning wrapped in affection. That squeeze stayed with me long after the appointment ended. Back at home, I noticed my mail had been opened. Bank statements were missing pages. When I asked Daniel about it, he hesitated, then said Alina was just trying to help. The way he said it told me he had already accepted her version of events. That realization hurt more than anything she had done so far. The lake outside grew darker as autumn approached. The mornings were colder. The water no longer reflected the sky clearly. It looked deeper, heavier. Every time I saw it, I thought about that suitcase, about what kind of secrets require that much effort to hide, about what she believed would disappear forever once it sank. One evening, I overheard Alina on the phone. She did not know I was in the hallway. Her voice was low, controlled, stripped of its usual sweetness. She is resistant, she said. But it is progressing. He will sign soon. I did not hear the rest, did not need to. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed listening to the house breathe around me, the creak of old wood, the distant hum of the refrigerator, the quiet certainty that something irreversible was being set in motion. I realized then that Alina was not improvising. This was planned, methodical, patient. The next morning, Daniel told me they were considering assisted living options. He said it gently, like a suggestion, like a kindness. I looked at my son and saw a stranger wearing his face. Alina stood behind him, her expression calm, almost serene. I nodded. I said nothing. Silence became my shield. From that point on, Alina grew bolder. She moved my belongings into boxes without asking. She labeled them. She spoke openly about timelines. She acted like the outcome was already decided. Each step forward was taken with the confidence of someone who believes the ending is guaranteed. But she made one mistake. She assumed I was afraid. What she did not understand was that fear had already passed. In its place was clarity. And clarity is dangerous when it belongs to someone who has nothing left to lose. The lake remained still. The suitcase remained hidden. And Alina believed she was winning. For now. The moment I realized I could not wait any longer came quietly, the way most irreversible decisions do. It was early morning, just before dawn. When the house was still asleep and the lake outside my window lay flat and colorless, like a sheet of cold metal. I stood in the kitchen holding a mug of tea that had long since gone untouched, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark glass. I looked older than I felt. Not because of age, but because of what was being taken from me piece by piece. I replayed every conversation in my head, every smile Alina had offered, every time Daniel had chosen silence over defense. The pattern was undeniable now. She was not reacting to my behavior. She was creating a narrative. One that ended with my removal. One that ended with her in control of everything my husband and I had built. And the worst part was that she was winning because I had been taught my entire life to stay polite. That realization hit harder than any insult. I had stayed quiet to keep peace. I had doubted myself to appear reasonable. I had softened my voice so no one would think I was difficult. All of it had been used against me. Every restraint had become a weapon in her hands. I remembered the way she looked when she pushed that suitcase into the lake. Not rushed. Not frantic, relieved, as if she had finally closed a chapter. That image would not leave me. It circled my thoughts like a warning I had ignored for too long. I asked myself a question that morning that changed everything. What happens if I do nothing? The answer came immediately. I lose my home, my name, my credibility. I become a story told by someone else, a cautionary tale. A woman gently removed from her own life while everyone congratulates themselves for helping. My hands started shaking then, not from fear, from anger. A slow, deliberate anger that settled into my chest and stayed there, heavy and focused. I realized I was standing at a line that could not be crossed twice. Either I stepped forward now, or I disappeared quietly. That was my breaking point. I went into my bedroom and opened the bottom drawer of my dresser. Inside were notebooks I had been keeping for months. Dates, times, notes scribbled in the margins. Bank discrepancies. Conversations I had replayed until the words burned themselves into memory. At the time, I had told myself I was just being cautious. Now I understood I had been preparing. I sat on the bed and read through them slowly. With each page, my doubt weakened. Patterns emerged. Connections solidified. This was not chaos. This was strategy. Alina had underestimated one thing. She believed I was confused. She never considered that I was observing. I heard footsteps in the hallway and froze. Alina paused outside my door, then moved on. That pause felt intentional. Like she was checking to see if I was still where she expected me to be. That single second told me more than any argument ever could. She was watching me. From that moment forward, I made a decision. I would not confront her. I would not plead. I would not warn. I would let her continue. Exactly as she was, because people reveal everything when they believe they are unopposed. The lake became my focus. Every day, I watched it. I studied the water levels, the weather, the way the light hit the surface in the afternoon. I walked near it slowly, carefully, as if it were just another part of my routine. Inside, my thoughts were anything but calm. What was in that suitcase? That question grew heavier with time. Documents, jewelry, evidence, something she believed could not be recovered. Something she believed was gone forever. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that the answer held my escape. One evening, Daniel mentioned lawyers. He said it casually, like it was already decided. I nodded again. I smiled again. Inside, something hardened permanently. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake listening to Alina move through the house, opening drawers, closing doors, arranging my life without my permission. I realized then that resolve does not arrive as courage. It arrives as acceptance. Acceptance that you are willing to do what is necessary, even if it changes how others see you. By the time the sun rose, my plan was not fully formed, but my hesitation was gone. And once hesitation leaves, action follows. I waited 3 days before I moved. Not because I was afraid, but because timing matters when truth is buried. Those days felt longer than the months that came before them. Every sound in the house felt amplified. Every glance from Alina felt sharper. She had grown confident, comfortable. That comfort would become her weakness. The morning I chose was gray and windless. The lake looked heavier than usual, its surface dull and uninviting, like it was holding its breath. Daniel and Alina left early for the city. She kissed my cheek before leaving, her lips cold, her smile precise. "Try to rest today," she said softly. I watched their car disappear down the road. Only when the sound was gone did I allow myself to move. I dressed slowly. Thick sweater, old boots, gloves. I packed a coil of rope into a canvas bag, along with a metal hook I had taken from the shed. Each item felt heavier than it should have, not because of weight, but because of what it meant. This was no longer observation. This was action. The dock creaked under my feet as I stepped onto it. The wood was damp, slick with morning moisture. The smell of lake water rose sharply, metallic and cold. I knelt and tested the rope in my hands. My fingers shook for the first time since I had made my decision. I told myself one thing. Just look. If there is nothing, walk away. The hook sank into the water with a muted splash. I held my breath as I lowered it, inch by inch, feeling for resistance. Nothing at first, just the slow pull of the lake. Then something solid, something unnatural. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tightened my grip and pulled. The rope strained. My arms burned. The sound of water breaking the surface felt louder than thunder. The suitcase emerged slowly, black fabric slick and swollen, dragging the truth behind it. When it finally cleared the water, it hit the dock with a dull, final thud. I've stared at it for a long moment. This was the line Alina had crossed. This was the proof she believed would never see daylight again. The zipper resisted at first. I had to force it. The sound it made was sharp, almost painful, like tearing fabric and silence at the same time. The smell hit me immediately. Damp paper, old leather, something faintly chemical. Inside were my documents, deeds, insurance papers. Letters from my husband I thought were lost forever. The ink blurred, but the words still legible. My jewelry lay tangled at the bottom, dull but intact. Then I saw the rest. Folders I had never seen before. Contracts, medical forms, power of attorney documents bearing my name, signed in handwriting that was not mine. Notes clipped neatly to the pages outlining timelines. Next steps. She had planned everything. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Not relief, focus. I photographed every page, front and back. I dried the documents carefully, spreading them out in the sun like evidence demanding to be seen. I did not rush. Rushing creates mistakes. When I was finished, I placed everything back into the suitcase, exactly as it had been. I zipped it closed and dragged it back to the edge of the dock, and then I stopped. I looked at the water again and smiled. No, not yet. The next phase required patience. That evening, Alina returned, glowing with confidence. She spoke about meetings, about progress, about how proud Daniel should be of her for taking care of everything. I listened quietly. I nodded. I asked questions that made her talk more. Details spill easily from people who believe they are safe. 3 nights later, she hosted a dinner. Lawyers, friends, witnesses, the house filled with voices and clinking glasses. Lena moved through the room like a conductor, guiding conversations, laying groundwork. I watched her from my chair, hands folded, heart steady. When she finally stood to speak, the room hushed. She talked about concern, about responsibility, about love. That was my cue. I stood slowly and walked to the hallway. The suitcase sat there, clean now, dry, waiting. When I dragged it back into the room, the sound stopped every conversation mid-sentence. Alina turned, her face changed instantly. Not confusion, recognition. I placed the suitcase on the table. I went for a walk, I said calmly. By the lake? Her mouth opened. No sound came out. I unzipped the bag and let the truth speak for itself. The room did not erupt the way people imagine moments like this do. There was no shouting at first, no gasps loud enough to fill the silence. What followed was far more satisfying. Stillness, the kind that presses against your ears until you feel it in your chest. I laid the first document on the table slowly, deliberately. I wanted everyone to see the tremor in Elena's hands before she noticed it herself. Her confidence drained in real time, like color pulled from a photograph. She took one step back, then stopped, as if her body finally realized retreat was no longer an option. Daniel leaned forward, confusion tightening his brow. "What is this?" he asked. I did not answer him yet. I placed the second paper down, then the third. Insurance records. Property deeds. My husband's letters, their edges still warped from the lake. I watched as recognition flickered across the lawyer's face. That flicker mattered more than any accusation I could have spoken. Alina tried to laugh. It came out thin, fragile. "Margaret, this is not appropriate," she said, her voice cracking despite her effort to steady it. I looked at her for a long moment. I let the pause stretch. Pauses make people nervous. Pauses force truth to breathe. "You threw these into the lake," I said finally, calm, even. "You believed water would erase what you did." The lawyer stood abruptly. "Where did you find these?" he asked. "In the suitcase," I replied. The one she dragged down to the dock when she thought no one was watching. Every head in the room turned toward Alina. She shook her head quickly, too quickly. "She is confused," she said, the words tumbling out now. "This is exactly what I was trying to explain to all of you." Daniel looked between us. I saw the fracture form. I saw doubt slip in where certainty had lived. I reached into the suitcase again. The forged documents came next. Power of attorney, medical evaluations, notes outlining steps for transferring assets, timelines written in Elena's precise handwriting. I placed them down one by one. The sound of paper against wood felt louder than any scream. The lawyer picked one up. His expression hardened. "This signature," he said slowly, "is not consistent." Alina stepped forward. "You do not understand," she said, her voice rising now. "I was trying to protect him, protect all of us." Her eyes locked on Daniel, desperate, pleading. He did not look back. That was when I felt it. The release, not explosive, not dramatic. A deep, steady exhale I had been holding for months. My shoulders relaxed. My hands stopped trembling. Validation settled into my body like warmth returning to numb fingers. I had not imagined it. I had not exaggerated it. Had not lost my mind. The truth was standing on the table. The lawyer asked Alina to sit down. She refused. Her composure unraveled quickly after that. Her words tangled. Her story changed mid-sentence. Every attempt to explain only exposed another lie. She was no longer the architect. She was the cornered animal. Daniel finally spoke. His voice was quiet, broken. "You told me she was sick," he said. "You told me she needed help." Alina reached for him. He stepped back. That movement did more damage than any accusation ever could. The room shifted. Conversations whispered into the corners. Phones appeared. Chairs scraped against the floor. The dinner Alina had planned as her victory lap dissolved into a public reckoning. I closed the suitcase. The sound echoed like punctuation. "I trusted you," I said to Alina, meeting her eyes for the last time. "You mistook my silence for weakness. You mistook patience for surrender." She stared at me, hatred flashing briefly through the fear. I felt nothing toward her then. No anger. No satisfaction rooted in cruelty. Only completion. The lawyer informed her that he could no longer represent her. Another guest quietly excused themselves. One by one, the audience she had assembled to witness my removal became witnesses to her exposure. Daniel stood beside me as the house emptied, psychologist, lawyer, neighbor, friend, filtering out with the same stunned expression. When the door finally closed, the silence returned. But this time, it belonged to me. Alina left that night with nothing but her purse. No explanations followed. No apologies worth hearing. The process afterward was procedural, legal, final. Weeks later, I sat on the dock again, watching the lake ripple gently under the afternoon sun. It looked the same as it always had. Calm, reflective, innocent. But I knew better now. Some things sink, some things surface, and that the truth always chooses its moment. After everything was finished, after the lawyers stopped calling and the house settled back into its old rhythms, I spent a long time sitting with the silence. Not the heavy silence that once made me afraid, but a quieter one, a cleaner one. The kind that follows truth when it finally finishes speaking. People like to say karma is dramatic, loud, immediate. I do not believe that anymore. Karma is patient. It watches. It waits until someone is certain they have one. Only then does it step forward and collect its balance. Alina did not lose because I was cruel. She lost because she believed manipulation could replace reality. She believed documents could rewrite history. She believed silence meant surrender. That belief destroyed her far more efficiently than anger ever could have. I did not forgive her. Not because I am bitter, but because forgiveness is not required for closure. Some people confuse forgiveness with peace. They are not the same thing. Peace came when I stopped questioning my own perception, when I stopped minimizing harm simply because it wore a pleasant face. When I accepted that protecting myself did not make me heartless, it made me honest. Daniel tried to apologize. He tried often. I listened, because he is my son, and love does not vanish overnight. But trust does not snap back into place like a broken branch tied with string. It regrows slowly, if it regrows at all. He learned something too, about what happens when silence is mistaken for neutrality, about how easily love can be weaponized when someone else controls the narrative. As for me, I reclaimed things that were never supposed to be negotiable. My name, my home, my voice. I stopped explaining myself to people who had already decided who I was. I stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that benefited from my quiet. The lake still sits outside my window. Some mornings it is glassy and still. Other days it churns with wind and rain. I think about that often. About how people assume calm water means nothing is happening beneath the surface. They forget how much weight it can hold, how much truth it can conceal, how much it can return when disturbed. If there is a lesson here, it is not about revenge. It is about attention, about listening to the small alarms that go off inside you long before disaster arrives, about understanding that politeness should never cost you your safety. That doubt planted by someone else is still doubt, no matter how softly it is delivered. I used to believe strength meant enduring quietly. Now I know better. Strength is knowing when endurance becomes permission. Strength is choosing action before erasure. Strength is understanding that waiting does not always make you noble. Sometimes it only makes you easier to remove. I did not win because I humiliated someone. I won because I refused to disappear. Life did not become perfect afterward. Healing rarely looks like a clean line forward. Some days, memories resurface. Some nights, questions linger. But they no longer own me. They pass through, acknowledged and released, like ripples fading back into stillness, right? And when I walk through my home now, I feel something I had not felt in a long time. Grounded, unmoved, present. That is not revenge. That is restoration. If this story stayed with you, press like. If you have ever trusted your silence more than your instincts, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more true stories where patience meets justice and truth always surfaces, subscribe for more gripping revenge tales.